Finding the K-bar knife was truly low-hanging fruit. The devil is always going to be in the details. And this case is definitely no exception to that. The prosecution started this investigation off by wanting to cut corners. They wanted to pick up the low-hanging fruit, this K-bar knife. But they lost a lot of ground in the process. I don't believe that one person did this. And I think that the way they went about it could possibly make this a cold case in the future if Bryan Kohberger isn't prosecuted. And let me tell you why. Police Chief Fry, he just retired today. And so now Moscow is going to start looking for their next chief of police. I don't think the chief wants to be around when the case begins to start, because they may not be able to prosecute Bryan Kohberger the way they want to. I think that what's going to end up happening is, because of how unstable the evidence is, the case could get blamed on the people who were heading the investigation. And Chief Fry was that person. Even though they're ongoing tips, he is still the person who helped to direct how the investigation was going to go. Even though others from other organizations participated, there's always got to be one head where the buck stops. And I think that when I saw this article, this action happened today, it reminded me that, this case itself isn't a stable case. When they arrested Bryan Kohberger, they anticipated on finding a treasure trove of evidence. They just have not found that. And the only thing that is holding this case together is threads. It's the DNA evidence. That DNA evidence is the only evidence that actually puts Bryan Kohberger in the house. That's it. Nothing else puts him in the house. But there is one interview that was talked about in the beginning, and it gave me the impression that the assailant, the suspect, spoke briefly to Dylan. I think that the police department shut that down immediately, but I don't remember them the news station retracting that comment. Take a listen.
My pleasure.
So a lot of information revealed in that affidavit. Tell me exactly what stood out to you.
You know, that affidavit was riveting, it was shocking, and it contained a great deal of information. And I can tell you that we received, since that affidavit, additional information. And here's what we know. That is on November the 13th, that Bryan Kohberger, a PhD student at the University of Washington, entered the home where the 4 students were sleeping through a back entrance. As he got in the home, he encountered 2 of the students, Ethan and Zanny, and he wound up killing those 2 students. He then went up the stairs where Maddie and Kelly were sleeping together, and he wound up killing those 2 students. At that scene of where Maddie and Kelly was, he left a tan knife sheet as he was leaving. He came down the stairs, and he came face to face with one of the students who survived this carnage. She says that she looked at him, he looked at her. She could see that he was dressed in dog clothing with a semi-mask over his face. She could see his eyebrows were burly. He said something to her, and then he left out that back door in which he came. That is what law enforcement was initially faced with. The student, and for some unknown reason, did not report this incident for about 8 hours. When law enforcement got there, they found this very, very gruesome, bloody crime scene. They started their investigation. What they found through video was that there was a white car, and they specifically described the white car as a Hyundai Elantra automobile. On November the 25th, they put an all-point bulletin out to law enforcement. On November the 29th, a Washington State University police officer notified law enforcement that a vehicle registered to a Bryan Kohberger was at a certain location. And it was at that time that they became laser focused on Bryan Kohberger as a potential suspect in the killing of these 4 University of Idaho students. They did a cell phone search, and they were able to show that Bryan Kohberger's cell phone pinged at least 12 times in the area where these students were killed. They were also able to show that Bryan Kohberger, they believe, came back to the scene after having killed these students. They continued to search and conduct their investigation, and part of their investigation was to let Bryan Kohberger drive that automobile from the state of Washington back to his home in Pennsylvania. At that stage, they were able to conduct and collect DNA, and they were able to show a nexus, a direct connection between Bryan Kohberger's DNA and the knife sheet that was found at the scene. At that time, they arrested Bryan Kohberger. They've confiscated the white vehicle. They are doing a scrub of that white vehicle. Bryan Kohberger, at this stage, waived extradition back here to Moscow, Idaho. Bryan Kohberger went before a judge where he was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and where he faced the death penalty or life in prison if found guilty. Bryan Kohberger sits in a jail cell, right in the jail that's over my shoulder.
Make no mistake, law enforcement, the FBI, and the state police, they all were looking forward to a treasure trove of evidence in Bryan Kohberger's car. When they submitted for the warrant, they noted in it for the judge not to lay any weight to the DNA found on the knife sheet. But by saying that and putting it on the warrant, it's an understood evidence that we do have something stronger, which is the DNA that places him at the scene. But never mind, don't even bother considering that. What is that saying? That's being a little bit deceptive, if you ask me. So the judge, to me, possibly made the leap of assumption that although there's nothing else that places this defendant in the house, there is the standing DNA that is conclusive, that it does match, so I can safely sign this warrant.
Maddie and Kelly, new evidence revealed in the murders of college students Ethan, Xana, Maddie, and Kelly as a search warrant is unsealed. We have all the details of what was found inside the apartment of the accused mass murderer, and tonight we'll go through the evidence piece by piece with our own experts. Will prosecutors be able to connect the defendant to the scene of the crime?
I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you for joining us here on Closing Arguments. The case in Idaho, this is not a case with direct evidence. There is no eyewitness to the actual murders. There's a witness who sees someone afterwards, but doesn't witness the actual murders. There's no video of the murders, and there's no confession. So what do we have? We've got video. We've got video of the suspect's car.
They have video footage of many cars passing on Linda Lane, and you can't even make out the license plate number or really the true make and model of that car. In black and white, gray, tan, any light color shows up as white. That's a fact. And even in this video, the headlights look like they were photoshopped. Last time I checked, this wasn't really the actual moving photo that law enforcement said they put into evidence, but they did allow on television to pawn this particular photo off as one of the vehicles or where they saw the Elantra. You can't really tell in this even in this picture. So I really don't know what he's talking about, because if I was on the jury, I wouldn't believe it,
Circling around the area, outside of that house, going back and forth. We've got that car visiting before the murders as well. So the white Elantra and the video of the white Elantra, crucial piece of circumstantial evidence for prosecutors to try to get that suspect from Pullman, Washington into Moscow, Idaho. Second crucial piece, those cell phone pings. Pinging everywhere. Those cell phone pings, sometimes coinciding with the video, other times pinging when there is no video, and sometimes we have video when there are no pings. But you put these pieces together, it's like a puzzle. Circumstantial evidence. How many times have you heard a prosecutor talk about the pieces of the puzzle that you've got to put together to prove the case? So the cell phone, again, is circumstantial evidence. It can prove that someone is there or the cell phone is there. And then you say, well, the cell phone's there, then he's there, and we see his car there. So you put all of that together, like, okay, now all of a sudden you've got this defendant not home in his apartment, but you've got him out of his apartment. You've got him in Moscow. You've got him right next to the home where the 4 college students were murdered. So what else do you need? You can get him outside the house, right? So that's important, to get him in the neighborhood. It's a college town. There's a lot of people moving around, people seeing things, people driving in, driving out for different reasons. But he's from Pullman, Washington. Does he have a reason to be outside the house? Now, something we've learned, 2 people survived who were inside the house. We know there was a DoorDash delivery as well. So you now have to get this defendant inside that house. And how do you do that? How do you prove to this jury that he's actually inside the home? Again, more circumstantial evidence. Evidence of circumstances that say, okay, you put it together, that would put him there.
Even big media realizes that you have to put Bryan Kohberger inside of the house. And this is one of the main reasons they are fighting to get the DNA kicked out. It is touch DNA. We shed millions of skin cells on a daily basis. Well, maybe not millions, but a lot. And I can have my DNA shed off me and touch somebody, and they fly to China. And if they commit a murder, they can say, well, I did it then, if that's the case, and I've never been to China.
And I think what was unsealed today in a search warrant could lead investigators there, could get the prosecution there, could get the jury there to be convinced that, yeah, this defendant, this suspect, was inside that home and has a connection to these victims. So today, an unsealing of a search warrant, and part of that is a a list of the items that were actually seized. So let's take a look at some of these items. We begin with one nitrite-type black glove. Black glove, that's kind of like a surgical glove. I mean, if you're going to commit a murder, that's something you would certainly want. You've got a Walmart receipt with one Dickies tag. We don't know what's on the receipt, but is he buying something that could be connected to all of this? Two Marshall's receipts. Again, we don't know what's on the receipt, but investigators do. This one is fascinating, a dust container from a Bissell Power Force vacuum, again, inside the suspect's home. Was he cleaning anything up? What would be inside that vacuum? 8 possible hair strands. Whose hair? Whose hair? Will they be able to match someone to these hair strands? And could they possibly match it to one of the victims? There would be no...
Notice that he said, we have to get him in the neighborhood. We have to get Bryan in the neighborhood, and we have to get Bryan in the house. So, these search warrants, this one specifically is speaking to the inventory that came from Bryan Kohberger's home, out in Pullman, Washington. The Walmart receipt, with the Dickies tag, they're trying to pawn that off as a kill kit. The Marshall's receipt, who knows what they possibly gleaned from that could have been possibly used in the crime. The dust container for the Bissell Power Force. Bryan already appears like he's a neat freak. One of the times when they pulled him over in Pullman, which was they pulled him over in Pullman, but it pinged from Moscow, Idaho. Again, hear me good. It pinged from Moscow, Idaho, but he was being pulled over near his school because but that's a whole different story. But
hello, I am Officer Langus. Stop spinning audio.
Notice how clean his car is. Very, very, very clean. And this is one of the stops. He's in Pullman right now. But this is one of the times, from what I understand, he was pinging in Moscow. This is one of the 12 times in which he pinged on the Moscow Tower. Look where he's at. He's in Pullman. Think about that. You can be in Pullman and still ping in Moscow.
Video recorded. Again, I think you know why I stopped you. You ran the red light.
What actually happened was I was stuck in the middle of the intersection.
Yeah, so I was behind you the whole time. Yeah. So technically you're not supposed to enter the intersection at all for that reason, because the light.
Notice how polite he is. He's very inquisitive, but very respectful. But media wants to portray him as this villain. The way his eyes are is just the way his eyes are. We all have certain features. This is his look. You can look at his younger pictures, in his younger days, both when he was a little bit obese and when he lost the weight. Same old same. It's just this is just the way he looks. It's not like a criminal. There's no such thing to me as a criminal look. But to me, he's very polite, and he's being, he is, if you look at his car, very, very neat.
Turns red, then you're stuck in the intersection, and then you're on the red light. So that's the reason I stopped you. Do you have your license on you?
Yep.
Notice that he accommodates the officer, immediately responds to what she asks him for. So this is telling. This is not a person who is outwardly aggressive or rude on purpose. I digressed. So let us continue to share with you all the other items they pull from his home.
Reason for one of the victim's strands of hair to be in his apartment, would there? A fire TV stick with a cord and plug. This one, I don't have a fire TV stick, but my understanding is you can store information on there. You can go shopping on Amazon. There's other things you can do with it. Maybe you can look up news reports as well. I don't know what information we'll be able to get from that, but seems like it's significant. This one, wow, one possible animal hair strand. Did he have a pet? One of the victims had a pet. One possible hair, another possible hair, and another possible hair. If any of these match those victims, huge for the prosecution. Computer tower, we know the age we live in. There's so much potential information from a computer tower. What are you searching? What are you looking at? What are you reading? How about social media? What pictures are you browsing? Where are you? When are you there? When are you in your apartment? When are you not there?
One of the major things that I want to talk to you about is going to be that fire stick and that computer tower. He is right that there's a lot of information that's there that they can glean from and learn about Bryan Kohberger's life. That doesn't necessarily mean that that is damning. It just means that what it is. It can tell you about a lot of things he searched, what he's working on, just different things. But at the end of the day, the defense said that pretty much nothing came of, there was no blood or ties, to her client. Here I'm taking a look at the 22nd of June, the defendant's objection to the state's motion for protective order. You see this at the top? Objection to state's motion for protective order. The reason why I want to go in here is because I want to revisit what Ann Taylor said here. And I want to go to the part that's really important. Let's see. And of course, many of you who are really following this story, months ago, the defense brought to the attention of the judge and the prosecution and the public that there was no evidence of anything, whether the car or the DNA came first. There was no evidence connecting her client, Mr. Kohberger, and the victims. Let's read it together, where it says, no matter what came first, the car or the genetic genealogy, the investigation has provided precious little. And then here, the next sentence, one of the things that really resonated with me was this next sentence, because the devil is always in the details. We just went over a list of the search warrant, and that was months ago. And in that search warrant, it had everything under the sun, as far as like those few items, not everything under the sun, but those few items that you just heard that were pulled from his residence. There was one string of dog hair, a spot on his bed. There was his computer. There was his also his fire stick, which I said I wanted to talk about that a little bit later. The reason why I'm bringing all of that up, including, they had already got pieces and stuff and did testing on his car. By the time she makes this statement, they have already gone through all of Bryan Kohberger's evidence that they pulled. And so this next sentence here, it says, and I'm going to start from the top. It says, no matter what came first, the car or the genetic genealogy, The investigation has provided precious little. This is very little evidence, very little, precious little. So she's not giving up that maybe there's something that they have that she don't know about. But right now she's saying that she's asserting precious little. Then she says, there is no connection between Mr. Kohberger and the victims. This right here is very, very, very powerful. And I think it gets missed because many people are focusing on the DNA that puts him in the house. They're focusing on the car that's riding around. Well, I'm in information technology, and I can see that the list of things that will pull from Bryan Kohberger. Since they pulled other things from Bryan Kohberger, which were the Fire Stick and the computer, they've already, listed out the MAC address, IP address, and all these other, ID identifiers, trying to match them up with the victims so that they can make a connection between the victim and the victim and Bryan Kohberger. That's the reason why, you have all these rumors out there, but in court filings is where the truth lies, here. So when she says there is no connection, that is a very, very powerful thing. The way I interpret that is, and like I said, I'm just speculating. I'm just here, as far as entertainment. People are innocent until proven guilty. And like I said, I'm just going over the information that I'm reading. And this is my interpretation. And this is based on, if this statement right here is true, and at the point in which she sends this to them, she doesn't have evidence that refutes that is refuting what I'm about to say, because otherwise I doubt if she would have said this. But when she says there is no connection between Mr. Kohberger and the victims, she is speaking to the evidence that was collected, and she's saying that it's brought back precious little. In her next statement, she says there's no explanation of total lack of DNA evidence from the victims in Mr. Kohberger's apartment, office, home, or vehicle. In essence, through the lack of disclosure and their motion to protect the genealogy investigation, the state has hired its entire case. That is very powerful. And let me tell you what. Let me also continue to show you why that's very powerful. If we go here to, and I'm just going to pull up, I'm going to pull up Maddie's, I think it's Maddie's, her Apple account. 1, 2, 3. I think this is Maddie's Apple account. This is the warrant on Maddie. It says the description of the property 1224 IMEI. Keep going. I assume that it was hers because at the bottom it says Mogan. Hold on for a minute. This thing is not working really well. This is Maddie Mogan's account. And the reason why this is very important is because of this right here. Here, let me see if I can highlight this. It's looking up all these identifiers, all the records of or information regarding the devices associated with or used in connection with this account. Basically, you have all these things. They're asking for her Apple ID. They're asking for unique identifiers, that are associated with serial numbers, advertising, like if she bought something and she used some advertising that can link to him, a global identifier. These are any IDs or any types of identification that can connect these, connect these victims to Bryan Kohberger. This is huge. So in other words, by the time they got their research back, this would have been something that I would imagine that would have this has already been done, should have been done. But she is asked for the cast information, and if this right here is being held back from the cast information and she hasn't gotten that, then that statement is still true, because remember, she's still waiting on evidence. But if they took his information, compared it, and somehow in her notes that she's received, there's nothing showing her that is matching up with those identifiers, those device identifiers from the victims, then you have nothing there too. Nothing, because that Instagram account was bogus. That wasn't even his account. It was turned out to be somebody else. So that right there, is just rumors. So that to me is huge. That means that where's the case? Much nothing came of. There was no blood or ties, to her client. Her client to the victims. Now, when the defense made that statement, they are looking specifically for things that are associated with the victims. So they collected all this information early during 2023. So at that time, they would have had an opportunity to look at his computer, marry a lot of his IP addresses, and IP addresses that for when he used his Fire Stick, to compare them to dialoguing or calling or reaching out via the internet to the victims. But remember, in the court case, one of the court appointments, and then also inside the information, she said that his lawyer, Ann Taylor, says she said that nothing is tying her client to the victims. So to me, I'm assuming, and this is just an assumption, like I said, I'm speculating, that nothing on his computer tied him there either. Nothing from his Fire Stick tied him to the victims. Nothing in which the hair strands and all of this tied him to the victims. She said there's no evidence there was no evidence in her client's house, in her client's car, in her client's office, in her client's that linked him to the victims. To me, that speaks volume. That speaks absolute volume. Now, that's his computer. But the thing is, she didn't say anything about his cell phone. So we will address that in another video. But none of this particular evidence, and I'm saying that because this is like him logging in over his computer to different sites to reach out to them or send an email or whatever. She's saying that no evidence from her client there's no, she says, it's connecting them. Nothing in the home, nothing in the office, and nothing in, just nothing. So I'm going to revisit the documentation so we can go over it. And let him continue so that he can finish out this list.
Unbelievable information from a computer. Then we've got three more things. A collection of a dark red spot collected without testing. Red spot, is it blood? Whose blood is it? Two cuttings from an uncased pillow of reddish brown stain. The largest stain has been tested. We don't know the results. Two top and bottom mattress cover packaged separately, both labeled C, multiple stains. What are the stains? Who are they connected to? I'm telling you, folks, this could be enormous to the prosecution. They already have great evidence. But you don't know what any particular...
He's right. This could have been enormous for the prosecution if the prosecution had found that this was evidence that connected him to the victims. It would have been enormous. To me, it was a big letdown for him. What do you guys think? Now, everything that I'm placing in this video is my opinion and my opinion only. I'm just speculating. This is for entertainment only. Just for those out there who want to think that I'm making a definitive statement. No, not at all. I believe that a person is innocent until proven guilty. But I'm a realist. If you point out that you do have DNA on a knife sheet, but I don't want you, not at all, to take this into consideration, Judge. Can you sign off on this warrant? Because to me, that's a little deceptive. That's trying to make sure you cover your butt just in case the DNA on the knife sheet gets thrown out. I think it was a rush to get this person, our suspect, in custody with the idea or the thought or the confidence. They were very confident that they were going to find all kinds of DNA in this man's car. It is always thought that when someone commits a crime, they always leave something behind and they always take something with them. But unfortunately, that isn't the case. There are always people who are in prison and have not committed the crime. So there are stereotypes associated with what type of people are expected to be arrested and thrown in jail. I don't think Bryan Kohberger, being a PhD student, overcoming so many obstacles in his life, obesity, addiction, and then trying to get his life back on track, that's a triumphant story. So because that is such a big story, they got to tear him down. Because why? Those are the rules. First they throw him in jail, try to break him down. But, if a person has a very strong resolve, that's just not going to happen. So people are closely observing Bryan Kohberger every time he enters into the courtroom, because their thoughts are, this man murdered, slaughtered 4 people. And so, why does he get to wear a suit? Why does he get to sashay into the courtroom as if or though he owns the courtroom? Who is he? He murdered all these people. No, he is innocent until proven guilty. And so, he should have the benefit of the doubt.
Reload. By the power vested in me by the state of Maine, I hereby order you to serve 2 life sentences back to back, one for each of your victims. So be it. Send you here for life. That's exactly what they did. I believe in two things. Discipline and the Bible. Here you receive both.
And you came to Shawshank Prison in 1947.
Why'd you do it?
I didn't, since you asked. You can fit right in. I must admit, I didn't think much of Annie the first time I laid eyes on him. He had a quiet way about it. A walk and a talk that just wasn't normal around here.
There are places in the world that aren't made out of stone. There's something inside I can't touch.
We'll talk about it. Hope. Okay, something, friend. Hope. It's the end of this thing.
Damn it, you friend, you put me behind.
Hope and drive the man insane.
You better be sick or dead in there. Kick you up.
Look at you, see like that. Oh, my holy God.
Yes, it comes down to a simple choice. Get busy living. You get busy dying.
Get busy living. Or get busy dying. Understand me?
This case has so many twists and turns. You know, trying to figure out when Ethan and Xana actually were at home, the timeline changing, the infamous change in what type of car, the 8-hour delay, you know, the fight that Ethan had, that, you know, the night of, that Xana told her father about. They had supposedly ate pizza, but yet they're going to do a DoorDash for 4 o'clock. Xana's thin as a rail, but she's going to eat at 12, telling her father she was at home eating pizza, and 4 hours later she's going to be ordering DoorDash. That doesn't really make sense. You know, calling, you know, Jack, you know, from 2 different cell phones. And also when Dylan saw, you know, came to her door a few times, claiming that she saw the man clad in black. She heard voices from her roommates, but she didn't check. She called people over. The evidence must be revisited. And also, I think that right now they'd have insufficient evidence. And that's the reason why Ann Taylor said that she wanted the case dismissed. So if none of this evidence has panned out, and the only thing that's holding this case together is DNA on a brass buckle piece of a sheath, where now we know that DNA that's on a brass, it can't last without being degraded after 4 hours. So it's no good. So it was 8-hour delay before they even called for a 911. So where did this magical DNA come from? These are questions that cause people to be in prison and they're innocent. You know, I'm not saying that Bryan is innocent, but I'm not going to say he's guilty. But, from the actual crime. But in the court of law, I do support that. I view him as being innocent until proven guilty. Because I would want the benefit of the doubt, too.
That's crap, kid. He's proud of you. We've been friends a long time, so I know him as anybody.
Smart fella, ain't he?
Why does it come? Just be a bank run outside.
What's he in here for, anyway?
Murder.
The hell you say?
Wouldn't think to look at the guy. Caught his wife in bed with some golf pro. Reasons both. What?
About 4 years ago, I was in Thomaston on a 2-3 stretch. Stole a car. It was a dumb fuck thing to do. About 6 months left to go. Get a new cellmate in. Elmo Blatch. Big, twitchy fucker. Kind of room you pray you don't get. You know what I'm saying? 6 to 12, armed burglary. City pulled hundreds of jobs. Hard to believe how strong these boys could cut out a fart and jump 3 feet in the air. Time, too, that's the other thing. He never shut up. Places he's been, jobs he pulled, women he fucked, even people he killed. People gave him shit. That's how he put it. So, one night, like a joke, I say to him, yeah, Elmo, who'd you kill? So he says,
I got me this job one time, busting tables at a country club. So I could case all these big, rich pricks that come in. So I pick out this guy, go in one night, and do his place. He wakes up, gives me shit. So I kill him. Him and this tasty bitch he was with. It's the best part. She's fucking this Trixie, this golf pro. She married some other guy. Some hotshot banker. He's the one they did.
There are a lot of lives that are hanging in the balance. As much as, we want to see justice be done, we want the right person to be imprisoned and to have to face this death penalty. You have to be very, very careful to trying to buy into dehumanizing Bryan Kohberger. Just as much as the lives of the victims are precious, so is the lives of a person who perhaps could be possibly innocent. If he isn't innocent, I definitely feel like justice, as far as like imprisonment for the rest of his life or the death penalty, is someone who deserves to pay that cost, because 4 beautiful lives have been lost, and the hopes along with it. But let's not lose sight that the evidence has to align with it. Don't let the, speculation of non-evidence get away from us all. I was focused on, in this video, the evidence as I saw it, strictly what we know and the knowledge that I have. And what I see is the prosecution, they rushed to tell us that they were ready in October. They weren't ready in October. Why would you go back into the home to do a simulation? You were not ready. The defense kept asking for DNA evidence, and all of a sudden, like magic, something happens this year and they produce something. So why couldn't they do that months and months ago? What's going on? I suspect that if they are hiding their case, then I think that I would believe the same thing that Ann Taylor is believing. You're hiding your whole case, because if the DNA evidence actually goes away, then this whole case was held on by a string. And the judge knows himself that if that goes away, and the judge is privileged, to the evidence as it stands, then he too knows that, okay, you don't have anything on his computer that's matching their IP address. You don't have anything from his Fire Stick that's matching his address. And you don't have none of these things sampled out of his house that's matching anything, with the victims or their dog. So I can't hold him. And then on top of everything else, what do you expect an innocent person to do? To be screaming? No, then you'll think he's erratic and crazy. He's just playing the system just the way it is. He has to work the system the way, in a respectful manner. And I think that he is being respectful to the process and stuff. And that's all he can do. That's what I would expect him to do. So he's doing his part, and the system has to do its part. As far as like, if you see that the evidence is not there, why would anyone want to prosecute an innocent man? You know, when victims are, when the families have lost their loved ones, they're not going to be able to get that back, but they can get justice. But if by any chance the prosecution is just trying to give them a body, that's not real justice. You're just giving them this person, throwing them up as a sacrifice because you didn't do the right work. You were willing to destroy the house, half butt going to check all the DNAs. Come on. Anyhow, you guys, that's my spiel. So thank you again for joining me. This has been Twisted Tales of True Crime with Deborah. Like I said, on my other platforms, they call me Auntie D. Check me out on other platforms. My information is below. If you want to support the channel, all my links are in the bottom. Thank you again, and I look forward to sharing with you in the future. And I'm going to do a next deep dive, continuing on into this data. We're going to talk about these warrants when it comes to technology. So look for. May the victims rest in peace and in love. I think that it is important that Maddie, Kaylee, Ethan, and Xana get the justice that they deserve. And Lord, I pray that you give the family peace.